All right, we are now joined with Catherine. Hey, Catherine, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Greg?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for joining me here.
Thanks for having me.
I've been wanting to do this. I know we've talked about this a little bit privately, not too much, because I want it to be fresh, to be new, just to be kind of raw. But I wanted to get your views on demons, see if you've had on ghosts, all of that stuff. Because to me, it's all the same thing. It's really, it all goes back to the demons in the scripture, right? So it's all tied there. But I've never had any experiences, and it sounds like from what you were telling me, you have.
Oh, yeah. And it goes way back from when we were just little kids up until, I was in my 20s or 30s. Yeah.
And then it just kind of stopped after that?
Well, I think a lot of it, because I agree with you, I think that it is truly, I don't believe in ghosts. I don't believe in the dead talking. I don't believe in any of that. Although I do believe in demons, I believe that spirits do haunt us, but not of dead relatives.
Right.
But
they can
I
act
think,
like dead relatives.
Would
you agree with that?
Absolutely. Okay. They can act like it. They can look like it. They can take on the whole persona. They do all that. But it's like the more you entertain that and the more you keep that in your life, the more it's going to stay. And it wasn't until I finally got old enough and I just said, you know what, I'm done with all this. I don't want it. It was like the old, I forget, like, get away from me, devil. I didn't say that literally, but it's like what you feel like saying sometimes. Just back off. I don't want you around.
Back away from me, Satan, right? Or
yes.
Get behind
me. Yes, that's it.
Get thee behind me, Satan. That's right.
Yeah.
Hold on one second here. My cat, obviously, is more important. she just knows. I don't know how she knows. She just knows when there's something going on that she's not a part of.
Oh, cats are smart, I tell you.
Cats can see demons, right?
Oh, I believe they can. Yes. In fact, that's one of
them. Have you ever seen them looking at something that is that you can't see, that is not there? Because my cat does that a lot.
Absolutely. In fact, that was one of the stories I was going to tell you about. It was, I was probably about 11 or 12 years old, and it's when we were living in Montana near the Crow Reservation. And we had two cats, and they were Siamese cats. What do you call those ones? They're really pretty cats, but one was called Coco and the other one was called Haji. Well, Coco got sick and died, and so it just left Haji. So we had the female died, the male cat was still alive. And one night, I was just laying in bed, and I used to sleep, well, I've never really slept, but I used to always put the covers over my head. And I was laying in bed, and then I felt the cat jump on the bed and then start meowing. And I'm like going, Haji, I'm really sorry, but Coco's dead, I'm really sorry. And then I felt the cat walking. And so I took the covers off my head, and I'm like, Haji, there was nothing there. And then from the other room, Haji comes running in. And then he jumps up on the bed and he starts meowing and looking around. And I'm just like, okay, that was weird. That was totally bizarre.
And you also heard it?
Yes.
You heard
it? I heard the meow.
You heard it?
Felt
you didn't
it walking.
See it. Yeah, you felt it. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And with
you
the cat.
You felt it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. And
was there movement on the
I had the blankets over my head, but you could feel it. I could feel that cat walking on me because it's what she used to do all the time. And both cats used to always sleep with whichever kid. There were like 7 of us in the family, so it would like pick and choose. And yeah, they would both jump on the bed, and that's why I thought it was Haji, because it's meowing and it was very loud. It was audible. And then when he comes running in, and then he starts looking around and he's meowing, like, where did that come from? Where that, and I'm like, okay, that was creepy. That was a little bit freaky. But I have actually, too, I have seen these things. In fact, Montana, a lot of stuff happen there, as well as Minnesota. So don't move to Minnesota. Run fast, run far.
Not to move. I guess not. That's too bad, because I really liked a certain house in Minnesota, but that's okay.
Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong, I love the state, and, because that's my home state. But with the way the politics are out there, and our family that's out there they're like, the entire government is being overrun and overtaken by, that's a whole different topic. I shouldn't even go there. But yes,
okay.
I would rethink Minnesota.
Definitely a strange place, and I think the state. I'm guessing that there's a lot of ghost sightings, or not ghost sightings, but demon activity, paranormal activity. Because I don't believe in ghosts either, unless we're talking about. Sometimes I'll say ghosts, but I really mean demons. So if I go back and forth on that, I just want to make clear that I'm talking about the same thing that you're talking about. Demons. That's it.
Yes, and I do the same thing. I use them interchangeably, but I do not believe in ghosts per se. But when we were. No, go ahead.
I wonder what it is about where it got lost in translation, where it used to be demons and then it became ghosts. I wonder if people were just kind of freaked out, or is it this whole secret knowledge thing where they're trying to actually hide things from us so that they can use it for their gates and make it seem like, oh, if you follow us, we can give you power, and then finally they realize that they're pretty much under the control of a demon.
Yeah,
and rant there.
No, and I think you're right. It's like it goes obviously way back to biblical times, because when Jesus first was walking on the water and the guys in the boat started freaking out, going, "Oh my gosh, there's a ghost coming! It's a ghost!" And and Jesus like, no, it's not a ghost. Okay, it's just me. Calm down.
Right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. So, demons, and then of course when the Legion, which had possessed this one man, and they were asked to be thrown into the swine, and then threw the swine over the edge of the cliff. So I just think at the time, that's when a lot of the paganism started coming in with some of the we call it Christianity. Back then, I don't know what they called it. I don't know what the correct term was, but God-fearing people versus paganism. And so, they just really started mixing it all up and getting it all, because they wanted, I think it was Constantine, Pope Constantine, or was it Emperor? He was one of those, but it was Constantine, who really started to blend a lot of pagan traditions with Christianity. And that's how a lot of the modern day holidays that we have came about. They're not biblical whatsoever. And if people were to really study, and they would find out that, demonology, pagan worship, all of that was mixed in to get more people, kind of like to get the butts in the seat sort of thing. And how could they get, how do you get the pagans in? Well, make their practices part of your religion.
So you just basically what they do is they just water down Christ, they water down real spirituality, they water down Christianity, or what maybe back then they would call followers of Christ. How does this play in with the non-believers of Christ, but the old Jewish people of the Torah, the ones who are still basically waiting for Christ to come, right? Because I get just kind of a weird vibe around, kind of the same way that I feel around some of the Catholics, and not just the regular people in Catholic. I'm just talking about some of the higher ups. When you listen to them speak, it doesn't sound spiritual. It doesn't sound like the real followers of even the Old Testament or the Torah and all that stuff. It sounds like something fake, and that's kind of where it's even more dangerous than to just be a pagan. It's even more dangerous to try to be a pagan mixing in the spiritual the spiritual realm in Christianity. It's an interesting thing. It's an interesting topic.
Yes, and we have to keep in mind that back in the day, you were either a follower of God or you were not. They didn't have a whole bunch of different religions, and and then when you think back on how Christ treated the Sadducees and the Pharisees, especially the Pharisees, he called them what? Didn't he call them vipers? So he was not impressed with them at all in their lack of knowledge, and that's where I think a lot of people make the mistake, because I believe it was the book of Acts, or was it Galatians? Well, after Jesus died, and because he brought that message to the Hebrews and the Jews at first, but when they turned their back on him as the Messiah, he then told his disciples, and he told the Jewish people, it's like, okay, you've turned your back on it. Now this message is going to the Gentiles. So, yeah, and I know we're that's off topic. Sorry, but yes. Sorry.
It's all relevant. It's all relevant. Everything is all. Yeah. There really is one topic in this whole world, and it really is Jesus Christ. It really is God. That is the real topic. It's the question everybody asks. Even people who don't follow him, even people who've never heard about God, people who even hate him, when they're in trouble, generally the first thing people start doing is praying. It's just just natural. There's something very natural. I had a friend. He was a very strong Christian when we were young, and then I chatted with him a couple years later, and it was like a totally different person. I'm worried about him now because he's into some of that Eastern mythology, spirituality stuff and all that. So I pray for him, and I'm concerned about him. But he told me this story once, and this was at the height when he was pretty much not anti-Christ, but just like whatever, you guys are crazy. And he was working, he was painting in this house, and I remember he told me he opened up this chest, and something came out of it and started fighting with him, like physically punching him. He got freaked out, and he started praying, and he ran out and he left, and he didn't have any scars or anything like that on him, but whatever it was, it freaked him out. I think he might have been dabbling in some things that he shouldn't have been dabbling in, like maybe with the Ouija board. But generally, it can also just be being around the wrong people, the people where these demons are just hiding out from. But to me, it really, the part that I wasn't shocked about the demons that came after him or anything. I was shocked about how he got rid of them, and it was praying, and that was it. Yeah.
And that's and there's nothing freakier than when you see them or feel them come after you. It's that is pretty scary. And
I've never had that. I've never had that.
Oh man.
Never had that feeling.
I'm
Not
like,
that I
where
want
just
to, God.
No.
I'm good. I'm good.
No, yeah, it's not that. Something. No, yeah, that's one of those things where it's like, okay, I'll take it on faith. I mean, I am really a skeptical person. I hear a lot of people's stories, and because of what I've experienced in life, and I have experienced so much, that a lot of times when I'm listening to people talking, I'm like going, you're so full of horse patootie. It's like, whatever. Okay, go away. And then other times when you hear their story, it's just when you go through that stuff, when there's truth versus it's just somebody making up, whatever. Because back in the day, I think it was like the 80s and 90s when false memories were the big thing, where everybody's past and they were all part of this satanic ritual abuse. And I'm just like, okay. And not to say it doesn't happen, because it does, but it wasn't to the degree that there's just some people's stories. I sit there and listen going, wow, yeah, no, you didn't. Yeah. That's a false memory. But, like, for instance, there was one house, this is when we were in Minnesota, when we were just little kids. And this one particular house, I mean, and we didn't know then that our mother was into the spiritual realm as much as she was. We were just little kids. but we would be like downstairs, and you would hear like the toilets flush up. Everybody's downstairs. All 7 of us kids are downstairs, and my mom, and that's all who was in the house. We're all sitting downstairs, and then the toilet flushes upstairs. And we used to think it was so funny. And then the light would switch on. We're all sitting there, and then the hall light goes on. And you watch the switch move up and down, right? And so we're laughing and laughing. It's so funny, it's so funny. And we used to take turns and see who could race up the stairs the fastest to get to go turn off the light switch. I mean, we had no idea what was going on at first. And I mean, this would go on.
How old? Between the 7 kids, you were how old was? What is the age range between?
Oh boy, let me think. I don't have a lot of memories. A lot of my memories are gone. I was probably 5, so it was probably between the ages of like 3 and 11 or 12. My mom had us all pretty close together. And and so we would all, whoever got upstairs got to turn the light off. And then, we would do things like wait until we're downstairs, right? We're talking to them. And so we'd run downstairs, whoever's turn it was, and we would all sit down. The toilet would flush again, and the light would go back on. And we just thought it was hilarious. And in the middle of the night, I remember my youngest sibling, they got up, and then they came running into the room, and they were just hysterical. And I'm like, what's wrong? What's wrong? And they're like, all of the dishes are on the table. And I'm like, no, they're not. Okay, after everything I'd seen, I'm still the smart aleck kid going, no, they're not. No, they're not. And so they're like, so we go down there, and as we're going toward the kitchen, you hear the clattering. I hear all this clattering, and I go, oh, no, that's, it's so-and-so, they're in there, and they're doing this. And the youngest, just the look of sheer panic on their face. No. So we get in there, and everything's put away. And I'm like, okay, whatever. So we step out, and as soon as we step out of the kitchen, you hear the clattering again. So we open up the door, and it's just like, what is it? There's a movie. I think it was the Sixth Sense. Is that the one where the little kid gets so scared and the cupboards start opening and the mom thinks he's doing it, and he's like seeing the ghosts or the dead people? And and it was, I kid you not, it was just like that. You open up the door, and the cupboards are open and the drawers are open, and again, we just thought it was so funny. And it's like, okay. That happened a lot in Minnesota. And then it followed us.
Was there any malice at that time? At that time, was there any malice, anything like tried to hurt anybody or anything like that? Right now it sounds...
No, at that point it was all fun and games. We thought it was funny. And we used to think that they were a friend, right? Somebody to play with. We didn't know any better. And it wasn't until we moved to California that it went from all fun and games to it was like, okay, this is not good. This is so not good. And one night...
That sounds about right in California. Yeah.
I know. I know. But a lot of it, too, like I said, as we got older, we found out just how, it was actually my mother who was bringing in these demons. And that's when it started to be where things started to get really scary, where they would grab you, where you're sitting there or you're laying down and something grabs your hands and you can't move your hands. And you're like going, oh my gosh, this is no longer fun. And they would take things, and things would like a lamp or a plate or anything like that would go flying across the room. And that's when it's like going, wait a second, this is no longer fun. And there was one night when my sister, my oldest sister, she was sleeping on the couch, and in the middle of the night we hear her yelling, and we go, I go running in there. I was a pretty fast little kid, but I was usually the first one because I was so nosy. So I'm running in there and to see my sister, and she's struggling and her arms are up above her head, and she's struggling, and she's like, let go of me, let go of me. And I'm like, there's nobody there. And she was just so hysterical. She's like, let go. And she couldn't move. You could just see it. She was fighting something. And then she just moved her arm. They finally let go, and her arms just, then came loose, and she ended up knocking over the lamp right next to her. But then she's like going, it had me. It wouldn't let me go. And you're just like, okay. That's when it really started to get, the evilness of it all started coming about.
What do you think changed between your move from Minnesota to California?
I honestly believe it was my mother, and what she would do. How do I explain this? When you hear the term evil incarnate, that would be my mom. I remember, when I first was old enough and I heard the story of, what was it? Oh, the story of Mommy Dearest, and that movie came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember, and I'm watching that movie, and I can't remember. I think it was at a friend's house or something, and they're like, "Oh, this is so horrible! This is so horrible!" I'm like, going, I literally sat there and I looked at them and I go, I'd take her as a mom any day. I'll trade my mom for her any day, because the old, yeah, I mean, the old were, if you didn't wash the dishes correctly, or if one was dirty, they all came out of the cupboard. If you didn't fold the clothes just right, everything came out of everybody's drawer, and you had to refold them. You had to wash up.
Don't forget about the hangers.
Oh, the hangers. Oh, yeah. Beat. Yeah, you got beat with the hanger. Yes. Yeah. Oh, that was nothing. My mom used to make us go out. The big thing on the reservation was we used to go out and strip willows, because they would make baskets, right? So we'd have to go out and pull willows branches down and strip the bark off and stuff like that. And then we would just take them to the reservation so the women could make the baskets. Well, then my mother got it into her head. She thought it would be really fun to go, well, I think you guys need to go get your own switch from the tree. And you go outside. It was just this mental mind screw. Yeah. And I will keep it clean, but that's exactly what it was. And if you came in with a small one, then she would go out and pick one. So you knew if you didn't come back with the right one, she was going to come back with one bigger. And so, and then, you had to go pick it. You had to strip it, and then you would get beat with it. So, I mean, so when I heard about Mommy Dearest, I'm like going, please. That one was a piece of cake.
It's a cakewalk.
It truly is. And that's why, it cracks me up, because so many people, they do things as you get older, and even stuff that people in the group experience now. And I'm just like going, take your best shot, whatever you guys think you're going to do. I survived my mother, so I'm good. There's nothing you can say or do. But no, to bring it back, but yes, my mother, she was really into witchcraft, Ouija boards, that type of thing, getting spirits. And she used to think that, I don't know if you want to say it was cool or hip, but yeah, she was not a good person.
Was it kind of how, like, when you and your siblings were laughing when you were kids, laughing at, this tricks, this light switch that was going off and on? Was it like that, or do you think with your mom, it was more hatred, more of a mean-spirited thing?
Well, at first we thought it was all fun and games with my mom, but then as the years went on and as it progressed, we realized it really was just evil. And she would... But
I mean, do you think that your mom at one point thought that it was all fun and games, and later on it kind of turned her, it started eating away at her, whatever this thing was?
It could have easily been eating away at her, but I truly think that all along she secretly enjoyed having us being afraid. And it was like this evil part of her personality. My mother was one of those where if you met her, you would think she was the nicest person on the planet. She would, come across as really nice, very personable. Everybody got along with her. She was a beautiful woman. But you get her when she's alone and away from the rest of society, and it was like night and day.
Wow.
Yeah, she really became pretty evil.
Like Jekyll and Hyde type thing?
Yeah, yes. And
where do you think it came from with her? I mean, do you know how long she was involved in this stuff?
I do not. The only thing we've been able to piece together, those of us who have memories, some remember more than others. I think I don't have as many memories as the rest of the family. But she would, it was something she always did. It was like this, she would get a sick pleasure out of having that type of evil around. And I don't know how else to say that. She thrived on that. Anything that was of the devil. But when things started to get really out of control, she then started to turn to religion. And that's when, we first were introduced into the Adventist faith. But before that, and even afterwards, that didn't help her. She was still evil incarnate. But it's like she'd always, I don't know if she was born that way or she did have a pretty abusive upbringing when in her childhood. For example, her father had come home and found, her biological mother and her biological sister died shortly after her mom gave birth to her sister in the hospital. Back then, that happened a lot. She ended up with an infection, and they couldn't stop the infection, and her mom died. That was just one of those things that women used to die from. So then when her father remarried, he remarried a woman who was just terrible, really terrible. And he came home one day from work, I guess at lunchtime, and found his then new wife holding my mother's head underwater in the sink and was yelling at her. So she was trying to drown her.
My goodness.
Yeah. So I don't know if I used to use my mother's upbringing as an excuse to try to explain away the things that she did, but you truly can't. There's a point in time that as an adult, we make decisions every day. Are we going to be nice, or are we going to decide to lash out at the world? And my mother lashed out. And that was her choice. She could have chosen different, but she didn't.
Right. That's sad, because there's many people out there that do that go that route, but that's really sad. Well, yeah, so I probably got a little off topic there, but I know usually, with these things, it seems like, especially when you say that, your mom, she was involved with this stuff, and so that just made me curious. Also curious about how did she have satanic things, or did she have this witchcraft stuff like out in the open in your house, or did she kind of keep it in a closet, locked away somewhere, or was she very open about it?
She would keep it locked away. And a lot of times she wouldn't show us directly. We would just see the results of what she was doing. Like you would see spirits walking around your house all of a sudden. You would see these puffs of like little puffy balls of smoke. I don't know what else to call them. Yeah, there was just like little round balls of smoke that would float all around the living room. They would talk to you. It just really weird stuff, and it was oftentimes I'm like going, why would she even invite that in? Is something I could never understand. But she did. She used to think that that was really cool. And it got to the point where if the children were getting scared, my siblings and I were getting scared, then she would get like this perverted pleasure out of it. She would be happy. That would make her happy. Yeah, it was really, really weird.
So let's go back. Let's take a few steps back here. Let's go back to the very first time that you realized that there was something else going on, that there was another presence.
Okay. Yeah. When I guess the first time was, the house where the light switch would go on and off, but then after that.
Oh, sorry. Can you say that again? I think it cut off. I don't know if the recording caught you, but I didn't catch what you said.
Oh, okay. The very first time was back when, the light switch would go on and off. Oh, okay. Yes. See, and also, we had a dog. We had a Doberman when you were asking about the animals. And in another house we lived in Minnesota, we had the Doberman, and there was like a little landing. This was so you'd have a few stairs, there'd be a landing, and then the rest of the stairs would go up. And that Doberman would sometimes just sit there, and all of a sudden, I don't know if you've ever seen a Doberman alert, but they have this very specific stance. And he would alert and just stare at the landing and growl. And there's nothing there. You couldn't see anything. But he would just growl and growl. And it was like, okay. And after a while, we started to understand that he was seeing something, because it wasn't much longer after that then you would either feel something grab you, something walk past you, or back to the lights again, something like that.
That's pretty freaky.
It really was. But I think I
think a lot of people don't even like talking about this stuff because, they don't want to. I think you don't want to glorify it. I get that, but I think it's important just to hear these stories and to understand that this stuff is real. It does happen, and you don't need to fear it because Jesus Christ is with us.
Right. And I totally agree. It's like, I don't think talking about it glorifies it at all, because I think nowadays people are so numb and so used to seeing whatever type of spiritualism that there is. I mean, look at all of the, what's her name? She did all those Harry Potter things. You've got Twilight, you've got Harry Potter. There's all of the Vampire Diaries. I mean, there's so much evil that people see every day that they kind of just take it for granted and think, oh, well, that's just a story and it's not real. It is very much real. And when those demons start coming around and you start inviting them, or you don't have a relationship and you don't pray, you don't have a relationship with God and you're not praying, those spirits will make themselves quite at home with you. And they have no problem with that. And that's not something you really should want to have in your life, because they are not ever out for any good. I can't even tell you how many times I would get up. For me, a lot of it happened at night, and I'm not sure why it was always at night. Not a lot happened during the day. I would get up to go from the room to the kitchen to get some water or something, and I would see this spirit sitting at the table, this demon, and it had the shape of a man. I'm telling you, I can still picture this man. He had glasses, he had short black hair, and it was weird because it was like he faded in, like he didn't really have any feet, but as you got up to his head, he was more there. And he never looked at me.
Do you know what type was he? Could you tell what type of clothes he was wearing? Was he maybe from a certain time period, or?
It was normal clothes from the 70s, just what everybody else was wearing back then. I think it was a plaid shirt, and I couldn't really tell the pants because he kind of blended in. He was like faded in from no feet to where by the time he got to his waist and then his shoulders and his head, I could really tell. I mean, like I said, he was wearing sunglasses. It's the middle of the night, and he's sitting at this.
He's just sitting there.
Yes, he's sitting at the table, and he's sitting in the chair that the way it was, it's like there was a refrigerator, and then on, say, to the right of the refrigerator was a table that only had two chairs next to the wall. So one chair would be the refrigerator, a chair, the table, and then the other chair that would be, and he was sitting in that other chair facing the refrigerator, the side of the refrigerator. And I'm just, as I'm walking, I'm just staring at him, and I'm like, I never said anything, and he never looked, never moved, just sat there. And I'm like, what's he doing sitting at the table? Well, that's kind of stupid. You know, why are you wearing sunglasses at night? And totally bizarre. Really, really weird.
That is one of my favorite songs, by the way, where I wear my sunglasses at night. But
I know, but every time I would hear that song, I would think of that.
I'm sure, yeah. Maybe you're not the only one. You never
I
know.
Oh, man. And it was right about this time when I really decided that I didn't want any part of the stuff anymore. I think I was probably pretty close to 12 by this point. So I finally was able to get a Bible. I can't remember if it was the Mormons who brought the Bible over or if it was the Adventists. I know we had the Book of Mormon too, but somebody brought over a Bible, and I got to start reading it, and I was reading it, and it's like I just started absorbing it, and I'm like, you know, it felt like a hope for me. But the more I started to read it, you know, stranger and stranger things would happen. Like one night, I would just, you know, I was laying in bed and I'm saying my nighttime prayers, and then I open my eyes and I see what this demon was trying to present to me as the hand of Jesus reaching through the kitchen window. There's this massive, huge hand, right? That's all it's just huge. But it was dressed like the type of clothes that you see what they paint on Jesus, the robe and stuff like that. This massive hand is coming through the window and reaching. And, I mean, it scared me so bad because, I mean, I knew that wasn't Christ. I knew that was a demon spirit, but I had no idea before that how big they could be. But this hand was just massive. If I had to guess, I would say it was probably, I don't know, 5 feet, 6 feet long, by however tall it was, plus this big long robe. But that's all that came through. That's all I saw. And I'm like,
why did you think it was like Jesus or the hand of Jesus? What was your relationship with Jesus at that age?
I was just starting to really learn about him. I mean, we used to go to church once in a while, and then, I really started to read and do Bible studies and realize who Christ was and that he died for us. And that's what the spirit, this demon was trying to convey to me. Like, oh, look, I'm Jesus. I'm reaching for you. I'm here to protect you. It was the weirdest, I'm trying to make you feel calm while I want to take your soul type thing you've ever experienced. It was such a dichotomy of emotions at that time, where the one side of me knew that it was not right, but the other side, where if you're not careful, you're like going, but it looks like Jesus' hand. There wasn't a mark in it. There were no like nail marks in it. So I'm not sure why as a kid, but I think just because of the robe, you know, just this long flowing robe on the arm. And so since that was pretty much what you see in every photo and every painting of how they portray Jesus, I took that as that was trying to make me think it was Christ. And it was just, like I said, it was the most evil, calming thing I'd ever experienced.
Very interesting. And so once you go to, so you had the experiences in Minnesota aren't too bad, but it's kind of getting, it's going from funny to serious when you move to California.
Yeah.
And in Minnesota, you saw these things. You saw some things. You saw different things, various things, right?
Well, in Minnesota, I didn't see the demons then. We saw what they did. Like, you watched the light switch flip on and off, and the light turn on and off. You didn't actually see the presence.
Gotcha. But then in California is when you started seeing things sitting at the table and.
Well, the one at the table was in Montana, but in California is when the more it started to get a little more aggressive. That's when they would start grabbing you, and you could physically feel them grabbing you. Still wasn't really seeing them, not until we got to Montana. Once we got to Montana, and part of that whole Indian culture, and they're very into spiritualism, and then it just went. I mean, you could see them. They would talk to you, or some would talk to you, some wouldn't. They would look at you. They wouldn't look at you.
What did they say? What did they say to you?
Oh man! Oh geez, I'm trying to remember.
I'm trying to jog your memory here.
I know, it's so hard. A lot of what I remember, it's from what other people talk about. There was a certain bridge that went from Hardin, Montana to the Crow Agency, and even the police would never drive over this bridge at night. They're just like, no. If they didn't have to cross that bridge, they would not do it. Because one of the police officers, I remember him talking, because again, I'm like going, oh, tell me that story. What did you experience? And they would, because it was, you think it's folklore, but it's really not. But the police officer said that as he's driving across this bridge, he hears this voice from behind him, and I can't remember, just started a conversation and started asking him questions. He was the only one in his car. Well, so he thought. And then he looks in his rearview mirror, and there is, I can't remember if it was a male or female. Again, that was so long ago, I can't remember. But then there's this, what he called a ghost in the back seat. And as soon as he got over the bridge, it just disappeared, like a puff of smoke. And, he would never, ever at night drive over that bridge again. He's like, nope, you send somebody else, I'm not doing it.
There's a common theme here that we see, and I know it's not for everything, but a lot of the time it does seem like these things have more power in the darkness for some reason. Do you think that's true, or is it just a coincidence that a lot of these things seem to happen in the dark when we're supposed to be sleeping?
Well, I really do. I mean, and like I said, that was a lot of what my experience was. Nighttime, dark time, it was like you could just feel them start to come out at night. It was just so weird. There was only one incident, and that was in California, where the feel of the evil was so strong. All I wanted to do was leave. And this happened in a Catholic church. Now, I am not saying all Catholic churches are like this. I'm just saying this happened to have been in a Catholic church down in the San Francisco area. And we had gone to a baptism, I think. I can't even remember if it was a dedication or a baptism or somebody's wedding. I can't even remember now. But as soon as my children were really small. My son was probably about 3, and my daughter was about 5 or 6. And as soon as we start walking, we park the car and start walking inside the church. And I look at, my then husband, and I'm like going, we need to leave. It was just this overpowering presence, evil. That's all it was just evil. And he's like, we can't leave. This is my family. And I said, I don't care. We really need to go. And he's like, no, we have to stay. And I'm like, okay, as soon as this is over, though, we're leaving. And he's like, all right. But it was the worst hour, because Catholic things take forever. And finally, when it was done, I just said, okay, I'm grabbing the kids, and I will meet you outside at the car. Well, my son had taken off and went run to go play with the kids. So I'm like, I need to go get, I'm going to go get my daughter. You go get the son, and I'll meet you at the car. And as I go to get my daughter, I sit there and I watch her, and there's nobody around. Nobody around her. And all of a sudden, she does this massive face plant from the top of the stairs and lands right on her face on these cement stairs. And I'm like going, oh my God! I looked at him. I said, we have to go. My kids are being attacked, right? And she, of course, is hysterical. She's bleeding everywhere. So I go, oh man! I said, I have to take her into the bathroom. So I pick her up and I run into the bathroom and I said, I've got to get the bleeding stopped. We have to get out of here. And it was just this feeling kept saying, get out, get out, get out. And I'm like, we have to go. I can't do this anymore. So as I'm cleaning up the blood off her face and trying to get her lip to stop bleeding, he brings in my son. Same thing happened to my son.
Oh my goodness.
He went to go get him. Yeah, he went to go get him. Same thing. He starts to go toward the stairs. Something pushes him from behind. He does a face plant on the stairs. I have 2 children with bleeding noses and lips and hysterical and screaming. And I looked at my husband. I said, grab paper towels. We're out of here. We have to go. We just have to get out of here. And it was so evil. And like I said, I'm not saying it was the Catholic Church. I don't want anybody to misinterpret that. But whatever spirit was there that day, because I believe, I don't care whose church it is. If that church is not consecrated to God, the devil will take it over. The demons will take it over. And I don't care what religion it is. It doesn't matter who you are. It's what are you going to allow within that building you say belongs to God. And it was horrible. It was the absolute worst, because as a parent, you're like, I have to protect my children. And then when you know that it's the forces of evil, you're battling against the principalities and the rulers of darkness. And you can't. That's when I finally realized I couldn't fight against them. You're totally helpless. You're at God's mercy. You lean on God and God alone, because you cannot withstand the demons. You can't.
No. Not without him.
Exactly.
And he's going to help. And that's why I think it's just in our nature to just cry out to him, cry out for his help. And sometimes these things happen. And I also think that God is not going to, it's not like these demons have free reign to just do whatever they want to whoever. And it isn't like, if there's people out there that are listening to this, and if these things are happening to you, there is a way out. There is help. Yes. Jesus Christ is always here. He's always going to help you. You pray to him. You do whatever you can. But the most important thing is you have to get away from these evil things, from evil people that are bringing these things, that are attracting these things to you. You have to figure out what you can do. And the first thing you can do is read Scripture.
Yes.
And the last thing you can do is read Scripture. I would also say that too.
Yes. It should be your everything. Your first, your last, your everything. It's got to be. Because there's no escaping. If you allow your life to be in the clutches of the evil one and their presence, they are not there to be your friend. They are not there to make your life better. The word evil just doesn't even describe it. It is so bad. Even here in my house here in Colorado, like after my mom died, and my daughter would tell you this too, some really weird, freaky things happened. And my daughter, she's like, Mom, I don't really mean to say anything bad about Grandma. And I'm like, say what you need to say. The truth is the truth. Say what you need to say. And she's like, but she goes, Mom, I swear she just was the devil and the devil was with her. And I said, yes, but why? Okay, so tell me what you're experiencing. And she goes, there was always a demon that followed me everywhere we went. She goes, I don't care how much we prayed. I don't care how much I went to church or how much I studied. She goes, the demon was always there. She goes, when the demon left? And I said, no, when did the demon leave? And she goes, when Grandma died. And I said, I believe you. I believe you. My
Wow.
mother carried demons with her everywhere she went. The old, I don't, that's a whole different topic, but,
It's all relevant.
yeah, so for instance, I remember my mother, I swear, she sold us as children. And I remember going with one of my younger siblings, and we were driving this really long dirt road in the middle of nowhere. And we ended up at this, back then, the half-steel buildings that would be out in the middle of no man's land were military bases. They were military offices. And my mother would drive us up there. She took us out of the car. And I remember walking into this building, and we were just little. I was just so little. And I was so scared. I just remember being so scared, and I'm like, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. My mother didn't care, right? She just drug us in there, myself and my youngest sibling. And we both went to opposite ends of this building. And from that point, I don't remember anything else. I have zero recollection. But I can tell you that for the vast majority of my life, every time I would drive past one of those half-steel dome buildings, now they've converted them and they're used for other things. But for a long time, until the actual memory came back, I just remember, like, we'd be driving down the road and I would see one, and there would be this instant fear, and I would just like start shaking and crying. And I could never understand why. It's like, why is this? But then as you get older and you start reaching a certain age, your memories do start coming back. And yeah, that's when I started putting the pieces together. And my mother used to keep us all separate. We were put in orphanages. We were abandoned. And when I say abandoned, she just left us, took off, left us in a vacant house and stuff like this. And then she would do things to where we would be kept apart from each other so we wouldn't share our stories. And it's when we finally got old enough to where we could reconnect as siblings and we started talking about, hey, especially the demon stories and the things that my family went through. I mean, I remember some of the stuff, like I said, but a lot of it is still not there. But you start to begin to realize the depth of evil some people go to. And unfortunately, we were raised by a parent who was really, for lack of a better word, evil.
It's very sad. It's really sad. You're kind of talking about missing time. Sounds
yes.
like what you're talking about.
Yes, I have a lot of missing time.
I've had some of that. I've had some of that, and my ex-stepdad is he was very abusive in many ways. I think part of the reason why I have my stutter is because of him. I think part of the reason why I was so fearful as a child was because of him. Mm-hmm. And I had missing time. And he did sexually abuse his own daughters, his blood daughters. Yeah. And I think other things might have happened, but I think I might have some missing time on some things. I had this weird vision. It was a dream. I don't know what it was, but when I was little, I remember I was on this all started with going to baseball. So every year we would go to baseball and we do the whole sign-up thing, but we had to do a physical, and I never understood why we had to do it. I never really looked to really see if that's what we really did or if whatever happened, something else happened. But I remember I used to get that same feeling. I didn't want to go, and I was scared, and I was crying, and I did not want to go to this thing. And then there was missing time. And I remember one time I woke up, and I couldn't have been more than maybe 8, 9, maybe a little older, but I woke up on a pool table, and there were 2 people. My pants were down, and my clothes were off, I think. I think my shirt was still on, but my pants were kind of down, not completely off. But I woke up, and I was screaming, and I was running around this table, and they caught me, and I think they put me under, and that's it. And that image, I don't know why, especially recently in the later years, that image is coming back to me now. It's coming back to me stronger and stronger. And I do wonder about that stuff. But I know, and he was evil. He would curse God. Everything was God's fault. And I remember I used to wonder, even as a kid, I'm like, well, if you don't believe in God, then why are you cursing him? I didn't understand until later. No, he did believe in God, but he was involved in some satanic things. And I know he was things happened to him as a kid. And for many years, I did that same thing where I just justified it. Well, it happened to him. I know a lot of bad things happened to him. But after a while, you get to a point where it's like, you know what? No, that's not right. It doesn't matter if it happened to him too.
Right, exactly. And that's, I do a lot of research on criminals and psychopaths and stuff like that. And anybody, and this is why I always appreciated Jeffrey Dahmer, because he was flat out says, he goes, don't go blaming my parents. He goes, I made these decisions. I decided to do what I was going to do. I'm not going to blame my mom and dad. He goes, that was all on me. And so many others go, oh, well, I was abused as a kid. I did this, they did this to me. They did that to me, and that's why I'm this way. No, you chose. You got to a point in your life where you either choose to continue the cycle or you break it. And, and that's where, like, people like you and I, it's like going, no, I'm breaking that cycle. And I remember I would tell my mom, I'm just defiant to a fault. And, that's why, I think we've joked around, and I know I've joked around with you about this a lot. It's why I've been married so much, because I would always choose the men who were very abusive, very horribly abusive. I want to preface this by saying this does not include my son's father when I was married to him. He's a good guy, excellent dad. That's a whole different story. But everybody else, highly abusive. And it finally got to the point where I'm like going, it's like I would take them on, like somewhere in the back of my mind, I was still taking on my mother, going, oh yeah, you think you're going to make me do that? Really? Okay, let's see. Go ahead, bring it on. Especially my last husband, he was horrible. He would do horrible things like try to suffocate me in my sleep. He would OD me on medication. He would shoot me up and then beat me up when I was unconscious. He was horrible. And all the doctors and even the therapists are like going, and the doctors in the ER are like going, we need to file a report. And I'm like, what am I going to say? I don't remember, because I wouldn't. He would drug me up. I would just go in with all these bruises. And then I would just sit there and I would tell him, I go, you know what? You can kill me if you want. I don't care. And I go, but you're not going to break me. And he just would go, he would call me horrible names. But I even had one of my husbands who actually put a 22 to my head and said, go to sleep, bitch, or I'm going to blow your fucking head off. And I said, I just turned, I looked at him and I said, do me the fucking favor. And pardon the language, I don't, I don't want to disrespect God in that respect, but it's what I said. I'm like, do me the fucking favor. And he didn't know what to do with that. He thought I was going to be scared and freaking out, because before he used to always come at me with knives. And he's like, you're going to learn to protect yourself or I'm going to kill you. And so I would always end up with these cuts. I was cut all the time because I would be trying to put my hand up to defend myself instead of, defensive wounds. So not fighting back, but putting my hands up to keep him from slicing my face. My hands would get cut up instead. And so finally, when he puts the gun to my head, and I'm just like, I was 17 years old. And I just looked at him and I said, do me the favor. I was ready. I'm like, I don't care. Pull the trigger. I'm 17 and I will gladly die if it means I don't have to put up with this shit anymore. And so, and that's kind of what I say. It's like when people come at me, they don't know me. They don't know what I've been through. They don't know what I've survived. And I am not the kind of person who's going to go, I will never back down in fear. I will stand up. I will be nice. I have learned, God has really taught me a lot of patience. I'm way better now than what I used to be, because before, when somebody would come at me, I would literally go find where they lived and beat them up. And seriously, I just didn't take crap. Now I'm just like going, okay, God doesn't want me doing that. I just need to be more of a Christian about it and pray and say, okay, God, you know my attitude. And if I allow myself to try to handle this my way instead of your way, it's going to end really badly. So, I just spend a lot of time praying. And it's like, okay, God, you need to take this. You take it. You deal with it. This is your battle, not mine.
Man, I have I've had a joke that I've never gotten to really tell you, and I hope it's okay. But
oh, sure.
You said you were married 5 times. I don't know if you know this or not, but a famous rapper named Tupac, he was shot 5 times. And for some reason, it just kept coming back to me. I was like, you guys have both been through a lot. The only difference between you and Tupac is that you're still here. You're still going strong.
I know. It's like, that's what I tell everybody. So I told my ex-husband, I was like, dude, you can't. Because he came home one day and he was just being the typical jerk that he usually was. And I'm like, what's going on? What's wrong? And I kid you not, he turns around, he looks at me, he goes, I want a divorce. And I go, no. Why? And the only reason I said no is because I knew I'm just obstinate. You make me mad, and it's just going to be no. And so he goes, well, I thought you'd be dead by now. And I just looked at him and I go, jeez. I know you've tried, but you're just not going to succeed. Sorry. And I turned and walked away. Yeah. Well, no, he continued. He kept trying to kill me up until the day I got him. I finally said, okay, this is enough, because he truly was. When I woke up one morning, it was like in the middle of the night, and I knew I was crashing, and I knew I was in really bad shape. And I made it from downstairs to upstairs to check my blood pressure. And walking up 14 steps, my blood pressure was still only 57, and then it wouldn't register the bottom number. It was so low. And I knew I was crashing, and I started to panic. I'm like, oh, God, I'm going to die. I'm dying. And so I made it downstairs, and I wake him up, and I go, you need to call 911. And he's like, why? I said, I'm crashing. You need to call 911. This is bad. And he goes, oh, fuck. And I said, I was so weak, I could barely move. And I said, I would do it myself, but I can't get to the phone. And he's like, fine, just get in the truck and I'll drive you. I go, I need an ambulance. Don't drive me. I need an ambulance. No, get in the fucking truck. And so he wouldn't call, and I had no way to get to the phone. So I had to get into the truck, and then he drives below the speed limit to the hospital. And it took them 3 or 4 hours to get my blood pressure up enough to where it would register. And the doctors are like, okay, that was a close call. What happened? And he just looked at the doctor and he goes, I'm going to be late for work. And I'm like, wow.
That's ridiculous.
You're a nice guy. Thanks. Nice knowing you. Yeah, so after that, it was like, okay, at that point, I knew that he really was out to kill me, and he wasn't going to stop until I died. And so that's when I just finally said, okay, I'm done. And then so that was it. I stopped. I don't date. I do nothing anymore. It's like, I ran into an old high school sweetheart, and we spent 7 years together, but it was together as the best of friends. It was never going to be anything romantic. I can't go there with anymore. I just, my life has been such hell that I'm more than content to be where I am right now. And but
yeah, but if it's God's plan, whatever God's plan is, you got to be open to that too, right?
Yeah. God and I have We talk about that quite often. It's like,
gonna
no,
happen.
dude, please.
It's gonna, yeah. Whatever don't be like Jonah, because if you be like Jonah, you know how
I know. He's going to throw me in the belly of the whale. No.
Right.
I know
and
the
you're
old
gonna
saying.
end up doing what he wants anyway.
Right? Okay, I'll go to Nineveh.
Well, that's too funny. We need to leave. That was another key phrase that you said, and there was one time where I kind of felt like that too. And I was at a person's house, and this person had been doing all this witchcraft and all of this stuff. It was everywhere. I did not see it. I had like blinders on, even though it was like I had people tell me later on, yeah, this person would have like photos up of just weird, things happening. It's like I don't remember seeing any of that stuff. But there was the last time that I was in this person's house, and I started feeling sick. And I had no idea why, and I was just like, I need to leave. I physically got up, and I left. I went out to my car. I was shaking. I had weed. I smoked a little weed. Felt much better. Drove home. Didn't think too much about it. It was only later on that I started understanding what I was feeling. These were demons trying to come after me. There was something trying to come after me, and God was like, you got to get out of here. Thankfully, I've never felt that again. But once.
Oh yeah, it's scary.
It was very scary. But it goes back to the same thing. I just started praying, and I was praying about it, and that was really it. But I was even wondering, well, why didn't I see this? This person had pictures up. They had all this stuff happening, and I was just, because that's not the way that I want to look at people. And sometimes people aren't strong enough to just kind of say, you know what, we got to go. We just got to leave this. And that was a big wake-up call, and that was probably, one of the only real things that I've ever felt or kind of gotten that feeling. Sometimes I get around people and I get that feeling. And that's why I don't go to San Francisco. And maybe a lot of people might think it's kind of weird, but one of the main reasons I will not go to San Francisco is because of that feeling. I got to get out of here. There are demons there. It is overwhelming. It has been overwhelming to the point where I don't want to go. I will start crying.
Yeah.
You know what? Sometimes you have to walk down that valley, and if you just got to make sure God is with you. So I carry my Bible when I'm there, but it's just, and it's weird because as a kid I was fascinated by it. I wanted to live in San Francisco, the high buildings, all that stuff, Pier 39. I was fascinated by it, the whole thing. And now it's just like I don't even want to go there, and it's really bad. It's not just San Francisco; it's the whole Bay Area, but. And I do think it is a lot of just this evil satanic presence that is just growing and growing and growing. It's just kind of sitting there, and it's getting bigger and getting bigger. And the good thing is we are seeing a lot of churches popping up, and a lot of spiritual people who are almost like closeted Christians, I would say. They don't want to talk about it too much, but they're pretty much with you. They give you those wink. They're like, "Oh yeah, great job. Keep talking about this." But they don't want to talk about it. They don't want to think about it because it's that fear. But it's at a certain point in everybody's life, I think there is that time where they don't want to talk about it, and I can understand that.
Yeah. And there's nothing, I think, for me, there's been nothing worse where you think that your strength and where you're supposed to get your strength are from fellow believers, and they end up turning their back on you. They don't. It's like they become, I don't know, the hand of the devil instead of being the voice of God or helping to comfort you with God. They only bring about or encourage the evil things. And like I said, my mom was really, really good at that. And um, I remember we had a Ouija board, and finally, as kids, just one time we decided just, throw it away. I never played it because it just always gave me the EBGBs. But we cut it all up and we threw that thing away. But
yeah, we never. I remember when I was younger, maybe about 14 or 15, one of my friends, his mom was very, very spiritual and would always talk about Jesus and all that. And he had told me this story about the Ouija board. And I guess he was talking with some girls and they were playing with it. And I guess something really strange happened. And anyways, he felt this kind of presence, this demon trying to go after him, trying to take his body over. And he wasn't even there, but he was on the phone with them.
Wow.
And I always took that seriously. And he's a pastor now, and he's a really, strong pastor. And it's just really odd. And I don't know. I just thought it was odd. I also think it's odd the way that people don't really talk about this. They don't talk about it like it's real life. But that's why I'm glad we're here talking about these real things.
Yeah, and that's where I think a lot of Christians, why and how they get fooled into believing or following along with, whatever the latest tradition is. It's like it used to be that I used to think Halloween was fun. I really did, until I finally got older and I'm like, what am I doing? This is
Right.
really the celebration of demons. You dress up on that, for All Hallows Eve, and you're dressing up as a ghost so the ghosts don't come back and take your soul. They think you're one of them to begin with, and that's the whole idea behind the costumes. And I'm like, wow, when you start looking at what these things truly are in our society that they put off as innocent fun, it's really very demonic.
Yeah, it is. It really is, and it's like it's right in our face, but yet it's in a certain way that people can't really see it unless you know what you're looking for. Somebody used to be able to walk into Toys R Us and buy a Ouija board.
Yeah,
there were Ouija boards that were made for kids.
Yes.
That were made. I mean, this is real stuff. This is real life. And I think a lot of people, from my view, from the people that I've talked with, a lot of them don't talk about it. I think they are scared of it. They are scared of it because it does have power, and it's not something to take lightly. And I think a lot of people just want to take things lightly and just live life, watch their shows, and that's it, and not be bothered with anybody else. But that's not what we're here for. We weren't put on this earth for us, just so we could just do whatever we wanted to. There's a purpose. Every person on this planet has a purpose.
Correct.
And if we don't find that purpose, I think that's when people start feeling very sad, which is now what they call depression, which I could, I don't know if that term, I don't really believe in that term. I just think it's just this sadness. But the sadness has to do with fear, and it has to do with how the devil gets to us through that sadness, through that fear. And now we have all of these drugs and all of that stuff that kind of just puts it on steroids. That's all that stuff really does. It's, people who are depressed taking antidepressants and getting more sad.
Mm-hmm.
It defeats the whole purpose, but I think it does open doors. I think a lot of these drugs that they have now can open doors that normally or in the past would not be opened so easily. Anyway.
Right. And the thing is there is a difference between people who suffer from a chemical imbalance due to whatever, because childhood trauma does affect the brain. It does, without question. But because the pharmaceutical companies have found that just because they tell somebody, well, if you wake up one day and you're just not extremely happy, well, then you must be sad. And if you're sad, then you're depressed. And if you're depressed, take some Cymbalta. You know what I mean? And it's like, wait a second, you don't need that. It's just a sad day. Deal with it. Go out and do something. A lot of it's lack of exercise or lack of food or just get out of yourself for a minute. Go do something. Go volunteer. And I don't want that to be confused with those who truly have real issues with chemical imbalances. But however, they weren't making enough money off of the people who truly do need it. So they start creating. It was like this Big Bang show where Bernadette, she has her PhD and she works for some pharmaceutical company. And she came home one day and she's like going, we created and cured a disease today. And that's what they do. They create something, but they also have the cure now for you. And that's how they make their money. And if people would understand that, just because you may be sad doesn't mean you're depressed. And to allow yourself to be taken over and to fall in that pit, that little devil's playground, and allow yourself to be hooked on drugs or allow yourself to be hooked on alcohol or even hooked on pity parties. There are people who live to be to get people's sympathy. That none of those are putting your life in God's hands. All of those are following a different spirit, the wrong spirit. And it's all about balance. It's, turn your life over to God and understand that whatever choices you make, good or bad, there's going to be consequences. And a lot of times people don't want to face those consequences to a bad decision.
That's right. So they run to find something else. Mm-hmm. And all they really need is Christ.
Yeah. And it's funny because and I just think it's funny because, when we were growing up, again, I never did drugs. In high school, I was never the kind of kid. I didn't do drugs. I didn't go get drunk. I didn't do any of that stuff because I was going to graduate high school. And up into where I am in the line of children, nobody had graduated. And I was third. There's only two younger than me. And I'm like going, I'm going to graduate, because my mother would just, she was really horrible. And I remember going to parties and stuff, even after I graduated, and I would be sitting in this room and people are smoking pot, getting drunk, and they're like, hey, you want some? And I'm like, nope. And they're like, one person came up and says, how can you always just say no? How can you not be tempted? And I looked at him and I said, have you looked at yourself? I said, stop right now and look at everybody in the room. But they were so high, they didn't know what I was talking about. I go, what a waste of money. I go, they're going to go throw all that out. I said, they spent all this money on alcohol, and what they're going to do is go throw it up in the toilet. I said, I could use that money. So I was always the party pooper and, stuff like that. And I'm like, so I never understood that you have to party because everybody else parties. And I'm like, no, we grew up without money. And if I had $5, you think I'm going to go buy booze or weed? Oh, hell no. I'm going to go buy me some bread. I want food. So, right. Yeah, so that's the type of stuff. But I finally remembered the best way that I could describe my mom. You remember the original Carrie movie? Not the remake, but the first one, and that mother.
Yeah, I'm not into the remakes at all.
Yeah, me either. But if you
there might be one.
if you look at Carrie's mother, that's my mother. Plus on steroids. That's my mother's that plus steroids. So yes, that type of, and then especially when she started to find religion, then it all became about that overbearing religious abuse. And so, yeah.
Which kind of sounds like how the devil is, right? The I mean, a lot of people, I don't know if they understand this, but the devil believes in God. The devil believes in Jesus Christ, too. I don't know if a lot of people get that, but that just shows you even the devil, the stupidest one here, that I think is the stupidest one in all of this, even the devil knows that God is real. For whatever reason, I mean, how could you be the whatever, so close to God to understand all this and still not recognize who God is, or to challenge that? Like what? And that's a whole nother level, because we're not talking about humans at that point. As a human, I can't understand any of that stuff, but I do wonder about it, and I know a lot of people also do. And I know it comes down to where people are choosing sides. They're choosing sides between the devil and between God and between Jesus. And I don't know if they really get that in the end, even the devil knows that the devil loses.
Yes.
It's already done. It's already over. We're just playing this whole thing out. And we know how this all ends. And I don't know. Sometimes sometimes I get mad at pastors because they don't talk about demons. They don't talk about this stuff. They don't talk about the devil. I mean, that much, at least in some of the churches that I've gone to. But the ones that do, when it's really serious, it's very powerful, and it's been very powerful for me to go to church. And I understand why people don't go. And I understand if I didn't find a good church that I felt spiritually comfortable with, I would not go either. But, I pray about it, and we've had problems with past churches and everything, but I just keep continually trying to find that Sunday service. And I don't know what your views are on the Sunday service. I know me and Walter have talked about it, because I think he's thinking that the Sabbath is on Saturday and all of that, which is fine. I don't know anything about that, right? I'm not trying to come at it like that.
It is.
But I'm trying to come at it as a child. I remember there was one verse, a couple verses, where one guy asked Jesus Christ, "How do you get into heaven?" And the guy says, "Be like this child." And that was, I was in juvenile hall when I first read that and took it seriously. And I kept that, and I still keep that to make sure, because to me it wasn't just, children are dumb and I was a dumb child. So wait a minute, why would I want to be like that? Why would I want to go back there? But it's more of a being humble and not being a servant, the innocence.
Yes, the innocence and the willingness. As children are more, they have more of an open heart to do what is right and what is wrong. They like my grandson just calls me up and is like, here's my shopping list, Grandma. And it's just they're just so innocent. Whereas us, we tend to be kind of, we're so jaded as we get older. And if I did a huge study on the Sabbath, and even the word Sabbath means seventh day. In every language, Sabbath, it's Sabado, and all that other stuff, it's always Sabbath, and it's the seventh day. Look in the dictionary. Sunday, first day of the week; Saturday, seventh day of the week. And the Catholic Church, even in their catechism, my daughter and I were talking about that last night. And you look in their catechism, and one of the questions is which day is the Sabbath day? And they say Saturday. And then the next question is, well, then why do we go to church on Sunday? And it says, because the Pope has the right and the power to change the Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday. And everyone who goes to church on Sunday is giving homage to the Mother Church. And most people don't know this. Most people are raised. Like when I used to go to church on Sunday, I never questioned it, because it's just what you do, right? It's what everybody did. And then when I did the study, and I'm reading in the Catholic Catechism, and then I went and I talked to a priest, and I said, I have some questions. Is this really what you guys do? Is this just a big joke? And they take that very seriously. They're like, no, we changed it. the Catholic Church changed it, and everybody who goes to church on Sunday is showing their allegiance to us and our power because they are keeping holy the day we set aside. And if you want to keep the biblical Sabbath, you have to go to church on Saturday. And I'm like, wow, that is so arrogant. Wow. But I mean,
it's trickery. It sounds like they just tricked everybody.
Well, and it is. It's all because, but they don't hide it. This is nothing that's hidden, and it's not. I'm not pointing fingers. It's in their books. It is so easy to find. It's not funny, and so yeah. When I found that out, I'm like, okay, well, I can't go to church on Sunday anymore. I mean, not to say going to church on a Sunday as well is a bad thing. I'm not saying that. But when it comes to the Ten Commandments, the Sabbath is the seventh day of the week. And even in Hebrews, where Jesus, or I'm pretty sure it's Hebrews, is Hebrews 4, there remaineth. Hold on. Let me find that. I'm going to look it up online real quick. Oh, yeah, Hebrews 4, 9-16. And it says, there remaineth therefore rest to the people of God, for he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his own works as God did from his, which is referring to the creation. For it says, let us labor therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall after the example of unbelief. So, you know, it is what it is. We may not like it. We may just sit there and go, you know, I'd rather us go to church on Sunday. Oh, yeah, do what you want to do, but it's not biblical.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind going to church on Saturday. That wouldn't be a big deal for me. It might actually work out better just for my personal selfish schedule. But I also think that where we are is where God wanted us. Everything is already done. For whatever reason, God wanted this to be done, where people are going on Sunday, and maybe it's to show, you know what, we're supposed to go every day. It's not just supposed to be one day or this or that, right? We're supposed to praise God, to worship Him every day.
Well, we are to praise Him constantly, but we're also supposed to work 6 days and have 1 day of rest. But let me go back to the verse 8 before that, or verse 7, yes. Hebrews 4:7. Again, He limiteth a certain day, saying in David, today, after so long a time, as it is said, today, if you will hear His voice, harden not your hearts. For if Jesus had given them rest, then would He not afterward have spoken of another day? There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. So, and this is, if you're going back to the whole thing, they're trying to say, but Jesus gave, you know, there's a new day of rest, and it's like, no, there's not. It's always been the same. God says, I change not. And when you go through the Bible prophecies, and there are a lot of prophecies in the Bible that talk about those who do break the Sabbath, as well as those who eat swine's flesh. And there's just a list of things, so many things that we tend to take for granted, or we say, oh no, that's only for the Jews, or that's just for them. But it really isn't. It was a way of life for everybody. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think the problem is that you know, it's not. Here's the question, not the problem. Here's the question: does that go against what Jesus said when Jesus talks about how we get into heaven? When He talks about working on the Sabbath, when He talks about these things, does, you know, going to church on Saturday as opposed to Sunday, you know, recognizing what the Sabbath is totally different, but Jesus isn't talking about that. So as a young Christian, as a you know, a young person who's trying to really just look at that and just kind of more focused on that than focused on some of these other things, which is not right. It's not good to just take one piece of the Bible and say, okay, I'm just going to focus here. But that's what I do, because I take what Jesus says and I make that my center. I make that my rock. And then anything that I kind of hear that kind of might contradict that, or is kind of counter to that, or is adding to that, like the Mormon book, that was one of the big things that kind of turned me off towards that. It's like, wait a minute, you're not even supposed to have a whole nother book. Right. You're not supposed to add to this word, and you're not supposed to take from it. There was a book that I wrote, and I had to scrap the whole book because I'm like, I'm interpreting what the Scripture says. Why don't I just tell people just read the Scripture here? So I lost a whole book off that.
Well, and that's okay. I mean, that's all part of learning. But we have to remember, Jesus is our example. And what did Jesus do on the Sabbath day? He went to the synagogue to preach. He always went there to read the Scriptures. He never changed the Sabbath. Even in death, he rested on the Sabbath. He didn't raise himself from the dead until Sunday morning. And so we have to remember that. It's not, we have to follow, we have 10 commandments, not 9 commandments. And if the Sabbath isn't
I think we have 11. I think we have 11.
Right?
Because we have the new commandment that he gave us after that.
Right. Well, and on the new commandment hangeth all of the law, if you remember, to love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
And when you look at the entire law, that's exactly what it boils down to. And so a lot of people go, oh, well, that we don't have to keep that anymore. Well, if you don't have to keep the Sabbath, and again, this was I did this study for years. If we don't have to keep the Sabbath, and it's part of the 10 Commandments, well, then I can kill. I can dishonor my parents. I can commit adultery. Because why is one thrown away, but the others are still there? They're either all there or they're all not there. You can't just take one out and toss it. But that's been all part of the brainwashing and the taking over of the pagan religion, or the false belief, the false religion, false message. You know, there was a song by Keith Green way back in the 70s, and the lyrics go, they put some truth to every lie to tickle itching ears. And it is so true. People will take a little bit of Bible truth and mix it with a whole bunch of non-truth, and then just I don't want to say twist it, but I can't think of it.
Yeah.
Yes, to find something that makes them feel comfortable. Yeah. And when I found out that when I found out that's what I was doing with, especially doing a lot of the holidays, and this is my personal belief. I don't want to say that if people do Christmas, they're going to hell. I'm not saying that, but for me, I can no longer do those holidays. Yes. Right. From what I found out in my walk with God through all these years, for me, it would be wrong. I just can't. I can't do any holidays anymore because of where they came from, where they stem from. But again, but doing Christmas is not, breaking the Sabbath. I don't think that's coming out right. But, there are points in the Bible that are make it or break it, but what we do is not what saves us. It's the blood of Christ only that saves us. But if you accept that gift, and if you say, okay, Christ, I'm going to take that and I'm going to walk in your path, he says, take up your cross and follow me. That means we have to start doing what he did. And with that, accepting that gift of life comes a whole different way of living, because that's how by beholding, you become changed. So we cannot continue in the ways that we were, like the Bible talks about milk for the babies. You need the solid bread, the solid food versus the milk. You got to grow up sometime in your Christian faith and in that walk. Mm-hmm. And so that's just where I'm at today. I don't do holidays. I no longer go to church on Sunday. And I'm not saying I go to church on Sabbath either, because I can't tell you the last time I stepped inside a church. But I do know, and I try to keep the Sabbath the best I can in what I do. Not to say it's right, because I'm probably just as wrong as the next guy. But looking at that aspect according to what is the Bible truth, and the Bible truth is Saturday's the Sabbath. That is God's day of rest. Sunday is was only put in place by the Catholic Church. And again, not pointing fingers, check their documents. They will tell you. So.
Yeah, and that's fine. And we can agree to disagree on that if necessary. For me, again, I have not done the research. I'm not claiming to say that I know anything. Let's just go with the fact that I know nothing, and I'm just reading this Bible as a child would read this, trying to understand it. And there's things way beyond my understanding, and this is one of them. And I've talked with Walter about that. So this is way beyond anything. I'm not there. This is like level 10, and I'm at level 1, okay? So that's
so you're doing the Scientology thing now.
I hope not.
I know, right?
33rd, yeah. If I said I'm at the 33rd degree, I might raise some eyebrows there. But I do think you did bring up a good point, and that this is kind of more for me was we know Jesus was killed on a Friday, and he was raised on a Sunday. And for me, the Sunday, that meant more to me. It was like, this is why we go to church. This is, this made sense because, okay, this is the day that he raised. He was raised he wasn't raised on a Saturday. He was raised on a Sunday. My personal view is that there is no day of rest. But again, we're not, this would be like an elder talk, listening to what a young person is saying. And that's all that I expect you to do. I don't expect you to take it for anything else more. But that's kind of where I'm at now. That's where I'm at,
Well, and that's
kind of linked.
And that's okay because like you said, you haven't done the study. I mean, there are so many Bible verses from the beginning to the end that talk about the Sabbath and how that actually is what determines the Sabbath is God's seal. When the mark of the beast, and a lot of people think it's a chip in the hand and stuff like that, but when you do the in-depth study and you find out that the mark of the beast is actually throughout history is actually the Sunday religion. It's following after the ways of the beast, and the beast being the Catholic Church, and how they decide that they're God. The Pope is God on earth, and he can change the Bible any way he wants to. Once you really get in and you start looking up every Bible verse that has to do with the Sabbath, you'll have a better understanding, but it's not an easy topic. It's not something that, okay, we know you shouldn't kill. That's pretty easy to understand. Don't kill. We got that, yeah, right? But again, we go back to the same commandments. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And it's the longest of all of them. When 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day, the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work. Thou, nor thy son, thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea and all in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. And Christ rested in the tomb on the Sabbath. He wouldn't raise himself from the dead that is the day of rest that he created. That would be pretty much against everything he did. So of course he's going to be raised on the first day of the week. But it's not. That is not a topic, I think, like you were saying, that people who are just picking up the Bible, who are just really starting to get in and understand it, they're not going to be able to pick that up and get that right away. It's hard to understand, and it takes a lot of study and a lot of reading out there to find out where Sunday worship truly came in. And I always tell everybody, don't take my word for it. Go look it up. It's there. It's everywhere. Go read it.
And is there a possibility that it's like daylight savings, that what we call Sunday is actually Saturday? I mean, they say a day is, a day to God is like what, or what is it, like a day to us is like a
day with God.
Basically,
a day with God is like 1,000 years. But that is not the same thing, because he created time. Time doesn't exist for God where he's at. And again, this is this is my understanding. I could be wrong. But where God is at in heaven, I think time only exists right here where we are. And that's why he gave us the sun, the moon, and the stars. He said they were for times and for seasons, and for, the evening and the morning were the first day. So many of us, we don't count the next day until it's morning time. Then all of a sudden it's now the next day. But the Bible says the evening and the morning were the first day. The evening and the morning were the second day. And so, and when you get into studying the history of the calendar, the number of the days of the weeks have never changed. There's always been 7 days, but the number of days to a particular calendar month have changed. But so it doesn't matter if the calendar goes 1, 2, 3, 10, 15, 28, 92, 1, 2, 3. That doesn't matter. You still have Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. So it's not the day number, it's the day of the week that remains the same and has always remained the same. And so when they did that change, I think it was from, I forget the name of the calendar, to the Gregorian calendar, the one that we use now. They didn't take out days of the week. It jumped from like the 1st to the 15th or something like that. So, and I think that's where some people get confused. They go, oh, well, it's the 19th, but is it really the 12th? Well, that doesn't matter. The day, if it's still Tuesday, it's always been Tuesday.
Interesting. Very interesting. Well, I don't know how we got off on
I know, right?
That, but that's good. Well, just kind of wrapping up here, or finishing up here, the one other thing that I did want to ask you, we had talked about when you first started having these experiences. When was the last time that you've had any demonic experiences or anything like that? I'll ask it in 2 parts. When was the last physical experience, and then when was the last overall experience?
Oh boy, I would have to say the last. Well, for me, physical experience is also what I feel it when I feel that presence around. And
seeing, feeling, touching, all of that. It's all that's what I meant.
And there are still times when now I still feel it. I believe that when the Bible says that the living know that they shall die, but the dead know not anything, and that their memory is forgotten. They no longer have any work for them, for they're gone. They don't know what their left and their right hand are doing. And so even after Don died, my high school sweetheart, he died almost 2 years ago now. But I am telling you, and this is what I really struggle with, and I talked to his son is a pastor. He went to seminary school to become a pastor in the Adventist church. But I talk to him a lot, and I tell him, I go, I know this isn't your dad, but I swear I feel him. So that's where a lot of the confusion still comes in for me, because I know it's not him, but yet it feels like he's there. It is the weirdest thing. And same with my mom. When my mom died, there would just be times when you just feel this really weird sensation. I'm just like going, oh my gosh, is that my mom's demon coming to visit again? I don't know. But I don't know if I can honestly say that it ever truly stopped. It stopped being a consistent thing, I think, back in about like the late 1990s. I do believe it was the late 1990s when I finally stopped, seeing apparitions and hearing things.
Different? What was going on in your life that would? There's got to be a reason. Why?
I finally stopped just paying it attention when it would get to the point to where, because before, anytime I would see it, I would acknowledge it, And I would either be afraid, or I would talk to somebody going, "Oh, we got to pray about this," and I'm so scared. And then I'm like going, "Wait a minute, I'm feeding this thing. I'm giving it power." Instead of just realizing that I know that God is there and this is not of God, I need to just ignore that. So, and it's like
fear gave it power. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, fear fed it. Yes.
Very interesting. Well, do you have any final comments here? There's a lot of other people out there that are going through this that aren't going to talk about it. They might listen to this, and you might be able to help them. Do you have any advice for people that might be going through this, or who have gone through this and aren't dealing with it or recognizing it? What can they do?
I would definitely say that first of all, they have to come to a point where within their own life that they acknowledge what it is, realize that the devil has no power over your life other than what you give him. And when I say the devil, I also mean just evil spirits. I'm not talking about just Lucifer. I tend to use that as a catch-all phrase for all demons, the devil. When you no longer give that entity power, it no longer controls your life. If it's bothering you all the time, and sometimes they do, it can get so horrific. And you have to understand how am I trying to say this? What you feed is what's going to live. If you feed the Holy Spirit will thrive. If you feed the demons will thrive. You have to choose. When the Bible says, "Choose ye this day whom you will serve." Every day you have to get up and decide, okay, am I going to follow God today, or am I going to allow my life to be taken over and ruled by the evil one? It's literally that easy. And you make that decision, you make that conscious choice, going, okay, this is no longer welcome to my life. And you have to get rid of everything, even if it's a movie that has a lot of witchcraft in it, if it's a book that has witchcraft, or whatever that you have in your life that is feeding that bad, evil spirit, you have got to get rid of it. No ifs, ands, or buts. Throw it away. Burn it. Get rid of it.
Amen. Okay. Any final words here before we end this conversation?
No, the only thing I just want everybody to remember is, lean on God. Don't lean on your own understanding. We, as humans, we run by emotions. And faith should never be emotion-based. It should always be because that God is there. He loves us. He died for us. He shed his blood so we didn't have to. And accept that gift and be thankful that it's there. And with God, all things are possible.
Amen. Thank you.